Today's debate is going to focus on the issue of nuclear negotiations with Iran. Is this process that we've embarked on, this initial agreement, a breakthrough that's going to help us avoid conflict and help Iran wind down from a nuclear weapon? Or is it just the opposite? Is it allowing Iran to buy time and progress towards a nuclear weapon while we dismantle the sanctions that even brought them to the negotiating table?
I think this issue has a lot more ramifications than just the issue of Iranian nuclear weapons. And so I appreciate our panel, and I appreciate all of you for coming today.
Let's say that we're in a world in which you have to work inside this diplomatic process. What would you prescribe as the best means of getting the outcome we want?
Given the painful legacy of both Iraq and Afghanistan, it would be shameful if we didn't try to give diplomacy a chance.
I don't want war, but I'm convinced that the only measures that will save us from that choice are much harsher sanctions than what we have.
There is a diplomatic solution that involves, getting strong monitoring and early detection of breakout.
By all means, intimidate them. That does not mean that we make an immediate exit to the bombing door.
You've described this as a diplomatic march to the bomb. So the question is, would you outline the option you believe will prevent Iran from developing a nuclear weapon, and why not test out their diplomatic solution?
Meet them head on, and you, in fact, scare them. You intimidate them. We won't lose the Europeans, by the way. It was the President of the United States that actually took the softer approach.
There's plenty of leverage and plenty of incentives for the Iranians to negotiate seriously. And if they don't, then we ought to walk away and look at the alternatives.
What are the realistic alternatives to this current deal? And to paraphrase Winston Churchill, the only thing worse than this current interim nuclear deal with Iran are the alternatives to it.
How do we destabilize the current regime just enough that the young political cadres that are up and coming have some space to grow into themselves over the next generation and find it illogical to have this nuclear weapons program?
I mean, Iran has a very perverse evolution, and that is as the youth continue to westernize, continue to culturally democratize, continue to look towards the West, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, the regime actually becomes more scared. They actually hate us more. Concerning what America should do, I'd try everything. I mean, you don't know what's going to work. I would certainly just keep trying and keep reaching out, covert action, overt action, try everything you throw the kitchen sink at it. Just keep trying to do something.
The P5+1, and tell me if you disagree, has effectively conceded that Iran will have a nuclear enrichment program.
A very drastically low enrichment program, very tight limits on the enriched uranium stocks they can have, a monitoring system that gives us almost instantaneously indications that they may be cheating.
And I can guarantee you down the road, the Americans are going to pull away. They're going to go in the direction what the regime wants you to go in, which is, well, we'll let you have cameras wherever you want them in the known facilities, while they continue to make progress on advanced centrifuges. And listen, if you get an advanced centrifuge, the more progress you make with that, and the Iranians have made ample progress, you can have much smaller facilities, much smaller cascades, and they can break out like that.
The question is, how long will it take for us to discover them, and is it too long? So, Karim, why should we trust them now?
I don't think anyone is arguing that we should trust them, but I still haven't heard what a better and viable alternative to this current deal is.
My ultimate goal is an Iran which never gets within a mile of a nuclear weapon. Unfortunately, they're by now half a mile to a nuclear weapon, and after the JPA, probably sprinting distance.
I'd like to go down the line and ask everybody to give their final policy recommendations, what should be done.
The core case, in my view, against a nuclear Iran is this: a regime that is capable of taking a stone in one hand and stoning a woman to death who has been already buried up to her waist should not be allowed to get anywhere near having the ability to take a nuclear weapon in its other hand and do likewise with its neighbors.
Look at the way the Iranian regime handles internal politics. Look how they deal with each other. Look how they deal with foreigners. And then let them have some of their own medicine.
I think we've focused exclusively the last decade on Iran's nuclear program, and we haven't focused nearly enough about what Bret was talking about, policies which expedite political change in Iran. Because I think once you do have a more representative government in Iran which follows Iran's national interests, this antipathy toward America, the antipathy toward Israel, this nonsensical nuclear program don't make a lot of sense.
It would be a terrible, terrible thing for Iran to get nuclear weapons, and we should go to great lengths to stop them, including use of military force. But before we use military force, I think we have to make every effort to see if diplomacy will work.
Gentlemen, thank you for a provocative and responsible debate. It was a pleasure, and thank you to all of you for being here tonight.
These debates are useful. It exposes you to different points of view, but also it shows you that there's a lot of commonality across the board.
I thought it was a good exchange of views, and I think it probably allowed those in attendance to get a pretty good idea of the primary issues and also disagreements.